Stand by. This is Whitetail Brief, tactical deer hunting insights in 20 minutes or less.
What's up, everyone? I'm your host, Aaron Hepler. Let's cut the fluff, hit the tactics, and get you closer to your next whitetail. All right. This is InCamp Whitetail Brief. We're not going to keep our guests too long today because after witnessing Mark Canyon dancing around in his fairy garden, I'm sure he could use some real good tree time. So, welcome, Tony Peterson.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
I had to give you the little head bob to your fancy intros. Oh man. So what do you got going on, man? You ready for this season?
Man, my season's rolling, buddy.
Yeah, you killed in North Dakota?
Nope. I killed one in Minnesota the first night I went out, and then my daughter killed one. Just killed one. I'm actually, as soon as I get off of this, I'm gonna go finish butchering that sucker. It's out in a cooler in my garage. So we've been getting after it a little bit. I've mostly been hunting with my girls, but I killed a decent buck in Minnesota right away, and then I've been poking around on some public land in northern Wisconsin that I've never hunted before, looking for a few deer. So it's been,
Nice.
To me, it's weird because a lot of people don't really take the early season that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's been hot. When I killed that buck, it was 87 degrees. It's been rough for in a lot of places, but man, I love this time of year. Like I can't stay out of the woods.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for things to get rolling. Our season opener is Saturday. We had like an early regs opener, and I hunted a little bit for that, but everything's so dry, nothing's really like hitting the stuff that they were hitting during the summer. So a little slow there. But I did have I did have one of your worst nightmares happen. I stepped on a yellow jacket nest when I was out scouting for bears in New Jersey. So that was a lot of fun. I
How many
thought
times
of you
did they get
instantly.
you?
Just 5.
Oh,
It could have been
enough.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. There was a lot of bees, but it's fun, man. I'm excited. I'm excited. But this episode is actually going to air during your actual favorite time of the season, the October lull. So I figured, who is the most expert person to talk about deer hunting when it really sucks? And you're that guy.
Wow, that's a weird honor to have.
You write about hunting in the hot weather, you write about hunting in the rain, you write about all the conditions that people don't want to hunt in. And I'm sure there are times where even yourself, you're like, I don't really want to do it today. But one thing I've taken from you all the time is how much you say is when you make yourself do it, you never regret it.
Right. Dude, I look at that stuff exactly like I working out, man. Like people are always like, oh, how do you find the motivation to run? I'm like, I hate running. I just do it. Like I don't know, for whatever reason, I just don't give myself an out. And, like that buck I killed in Minnesota here, I don't really want to go shoot one when it's 87 degrees out, but I had a stand over a little pond and hadn't hunted yet. And I knew that property was, on the verge of getting blown out pretty quickly by the landowner. And so it's like, yeah, is it going to be a little bit of a sufferfest? Sure. But I'm also playing the odds, and I had 6 different deer come in, and one of them was a decent 8-pointer, and I shot him. It's like, when I'm up there in that stand over water and I'm sweating, I'm like, okay, well, somebody's going to show up, and I look at this stuff, this is like you kind of alluded to, but one of the reasons that I write about that stuff so much is hunting those really crappy conditions is because I'm always hunting around pressure, and if you're on public land or you're hunting a place that has a lot of people, the weather isn't your enemy. Like the conditions aren't your enemy the same way that lots of hunters are. And so it's always like, you just got to find a way to go either where people won't or when people won't. And that's such a huge deal.
I guess something that I always struggle with during the time where it's a lull is I get to go out during the week, almost any day of the week, which is a big bonus because, I'm not doing the weekend warrior thing. So the pressure is a little bit better, but when you're hunting those extreme conditions, do you find that deer, like where are they going? You know what I mean? They're not moving on their typical, like, oh, I'm going to go sit the acorns in the evening or whatever that is.
It's just, to me, I mean, it depends what kind of cover you're hunting, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people believe in the lull purely because they mostly hunt field edges and food plots, right?
Right.
And by the time you get to mid-October, generally it's the pressure we've put on them in those spots, I think, that kind of keeps them back in the cover.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is, okay, well, they're not moving. They're nocturnal for whatever reason. It's just totally not true. Like, they're going to eat, they're going to move in the cover. You just don't see them coming into the openings as much. And I think it's just like the cumulative effect of pressure plus the woods getting more open, where they start moving into those places where they feel most secure. And we just are kind of like chasing the 8 ball on that stuff, where I look at it like, my first layer is that easy stuff, right? Like the field edges, whatever, public, private, I
Mm-hmm.
don't care. Where you would expect, like if you were going to go hunt a Lakoski farm, you'd be like, I'm just going to sit on this field edge because a million deer are going to come by, right?
Right.
Well, the next layer in is that staging area, right? It might be 100 yards in, 200 yards in, but it's like, it's something in the cover where you're like, I know they're going to that food. They're just not going to maybe go there during daylight. So like sometimes in some places, I might be on that pattern 3 days into the season,
Mm-hmm.
or it might take a week or 2 weeks, depending on what's going on. And then you have that next layer back from that. And that's where the lull for me is like a huge deal, right? Like I'm looking for scrapes in that cover, because they're not gonna build a big community scrape where there aren't a lot of deer going. They're
Yeah.
always travel hubs. There's always a big reason. You'll see like random smaller scrapes in places. I don't really care about those unless there's a bunch of them.
Right.
But you're looking for that like 2 layers deep kind of thing, where it's like, it might be bedding or real close to bedding, but it's just one of those places where it's like, where would a decent sized buck feel comfortable moving in daylight? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's where he's going to move,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those things. You combine that kind of in-season scouting with the fact that you generally have fewer people in the woods, and you can still catch those deer moving. You can catch them in the morning coming back in, which people don't think they can do, or you can catch them in the evening. And, we did a little trick. I'm kind of thinking about doing a podcast on this, but that buck my daughter killed the other night I'm confident he was probably bedded within like 100 yards of us.
Oh, wow.
We hunted till 10 o'clock in the morning, left, and I had a trail camera photo at 11 o'clock of this deer. And I was like, man, it was weird because I was actually running over to scout a little bit of public. The girls were back taking a nap, and
Mm-hmm.
I saw a deer out in a field feeding at 11 o'clock. And then my buddy texted me. He's like, dude, I just got a picture of a big one moving at 11 o'clock. I'm like, well, something's happening right now. I don't know what it is. That's a sidebar. But anyway, when I get a picture like that, or I see a buck on that property that late in the morning, I'm like, that sucker's going to bed here close, and he'll probably come in the evening. And so
Right.
we walked in and it was hot and crunchy. And so I'm scratching like a turkey. I do that a lot, where when I'm walking in somewhere, if there's a lot of leaves, especially I had both my daughters with me, so we were loud. I'll do
Mm-hmm.
that 1, 2, 1 scratch, that turkeys do.
Yeah, that's a good
And I
idea.
used to carry a mouth call with me a lot, and I would just yelp on my way in. And I don't, like, you can't really prove that stuff helps, but I
Right.
just kind of feel like it does. And so we ended up going in there in a situation like that, where I'm like, maybe that gives you just enough of an edge during that time of year, those conditions, where that buck just hears it and he goes, oh, it's just turkeys coming in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about stuff like that when you're moving in to like that security cover that could be close to their bedding, is in a situation where you're going to go through a lot of leaves. Little stuff like that seems to sort of make a difference. And
Yeah.
so I always think about that, like, how can I get into that layer? Like, where is it first, but how can I get in there and not blow everything out? And I think a lot of people just kind of look at it and go, well, it's just easier to not hunt now and come back in the pre-rut. But if you're, and I've said this a million times, if you're on public land or you're in a place with a lot of pressure, that's exactly how everybody's thinking.
Right.
I mean, most people are thinking that way. So it's like, well, now you got to do something different. And like, these are solvable problems. Even if, even if you're like, the lull is super real and they're not moving very much, it's like, they're not all nocturnal. This is like
Mm-hmm.
still a solvable problem. And maybe it's a matter of sitting on that water in the woods.
Yeah.
or maybe it is a matter of volume hunting that one oak tree that has a lot of sign under it. Cause that's the other thing too, is we go sort of from early season where we're like, they're pretty patternable, right? Like
Right.
generally, and we kind of rely on that, but those patterns die. And then we go, well, now I don't really have anything to work with until I don't need a pattern, and it's pre-rut and rut, right? Where I can just post up and they're going to come through. But in between there, they're still patternable. It's just not like you're not going to have them come into that oak tree every night at the same time doing the same stuff. And your impact on those spots is different. And so this is, I know I'm rambling here, but I really look at like the lull is sort of a time when that's like when you can kind of ditch your trail cameras and just sort of be like, I'm going to go find that hot sign and I'm going to just hunt it now. Well, look, what do you have to lose? And the other thing you can do too is, and I do this a lot, is I'm like, okay, this is my time to go try to arrow a doe or two, because I don't have a lot of late season stuff to just like stack them up. So I'm like, I want to keep hunting and I want to put myself in the game. And so it's like, all right, well, maybe I'll just I'll sit this oak ridge and see if I can arrow a doe. And man, the more I'm out there in early October and mid-October, the more big bucks I see. And every once in a while, you'll get on something where you're like, I watched him cross the creek there in this valley. I'm going to move in on it. And you might kill him or somebody else, but you definitely have more options than you think.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that last part, because I was thinking as you're talking about different layers of a third layer that I can think of, but it's deep in a valley, right? And everybody says that you can't hunt valleys, especially when there's foliage up, which there's a lot of that in up into mid-October, because right now it's outside right now here, it's like 80 degrees. And you said it's hot where you're at. So we're getting that the leaves aren't all down yet. There's all this, like, everybody talks about the wind being wrong or the thermals being wrong when you're deep in a layer like that, like you're talking about. I remember you posted a video on YouTube for Meat Eater and for Wired to Hunt about just hunting those valleys anyway. Do you remember that? It was talking about that people are saying if the valleys are too steep that you won't be able to get away with anything with wind, so you might as well not even hunt there. Can you speak to that and maybe talk about why it's a falsehood?
So yeah, that one sticks in my memory because Mark and I argued about it for a while because he wouldn't do it. But I look at, I grew up in bluff country, right? Like I grew up hunting and we didn't know better, right? We just, if the sign was in the valley, we hunted in the valley. If the sign was on the top of the ridges, we hunted in the top of the ridges. Like we weren't like taking in a bunch of this information vicariously through other people.
Right.
And what I realized was like, yeah, sometimes you're in there and the wind swirls like crazy and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it blows all the way across the valley. Sometimes it blows straight down it. You don't really know until you get in there. And I think sometimes, like, I hunt enough situations where I'm like, I'm going to just get caught. Like, I'm going to get busted at some point. It's okay. Like, I don't really care that much if I still think I have like a decent plan. And I'll give you an example. That buck I killed in Minnesota this year, we were supposed to have a south wind, which on the stand that I went to was perfect. It would have been blowing over the pond. They could come from anywhere in there, but I was like, a lot of the places they come from, they're not going to get me. I got out there and that wind was blowing everywhere. And I was like, do I ride this out? Because it's supposed to die down. I ended up hearing a deer behind me in the one place where I was like, there's no way that deer's going to get me. And I turned around, it was a doe eating acorns on her way in. And I was like, this doe is in trouble because she's in the one spot where she's not going to get me. That doe stuck her nose in the air, took off, snorted. And I'm like, how did she get me? And I literally turned around and I saw a deer 180 degrees in the other direction walking through the woods. And I'm like, well, that one's going to get me for sure. And that one came up and it was a little buck and he hit my scent stream a couple of times, got wiggy, turned around and left. So in the span of, 10 minutes, I got busted 2 different directions. And literally I watched that buck. He walked away. He didn't spook, but he was definitely he was like, I'm not going in. I know something's going on.
Yeah.
He walked away and I turned around and I looked and there was a nice 8-pointer walking in the corner of the pond and I shot him. And I was like, I don't know really what the lesson is there, but you can get away with a lot of stuff. And sometimes in those valleys, like if you look at the general advice, or like a lot of people are like, I just wouldn't do it. I'm like, okay, well, that's why there's so much sign there, like
Mm-hmm.
partially, right? And
Yeah.
so, you think about that, and this, you've hunted in the mountains, like
Yep.
you can get up in, like deep where that valley pinches down, and that wind will be totally different than it will be when that valley splays out and opens up,
Yep.
right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
there's always little draws coming down and different things. And so it's like, to say that like you can't hunt or hunt bottoms, it's like, okay, well, which one? Like, which
Right.
one are you talking about? And so
Right.
I always just look at that and I go, I would rather try that during different conditions. I'm not going to like totally roll the dice. I'm going to be like, well, it's blowing this way, it should be good. Or I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to hang and hunt or sit on the ground. But
Yeah.
to just write off like whole pieces of your deer ground just because you're not supposed to be able to hunt there is, like, to me, that's crazy, because you just don't know.
Yeah. I know a friend of mine was showing me some camera pictures that we scouted a piece together that he had hunted a lot, and I not really spent a lot of time on it. And that's something that it like, speaking to what you're saying, is it's a deep valley like that, and there were 3 bucks that were in the Pope range at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on October 3rd. So it's like it is something, like, if you weren't there to try it, I mean, it's so dry right now, and it was so dry last year. We're having like a repeat,
Right.
There's nothing up high. Everything's down low in the water. I drove around last night to look for some areas where does were coming out into some areas that I'm planning to hunt. And everything was on the low side. Everything was relating to where they could get, you know, something light and green to eat, and make sure that they were not very far from water.
Right.
So
Yeah, dude, that lesson, like, people need to pay attention to that,
yeah.
because I mean, that's what I ran into in Iowa last year. It was so dry that, like, the
Mm-hmm.
typical woods that you would look at and be like, this should be covered in deer. I can hear acorns falling, there's cornfields, whatever. Almost all the deer were concentrated in the river bottom, and it wasn't just for the river. It was
Yeah.
because there's a different level of browse there,
Right.
dark green, moist stuff for them to eat. And
Yep.
we don't think about that stuff a lot. Like, it's like, well, you know how it is. You walk into public land, and if there's a like a state planted food plot in there, they'll lease
Mm-hmm.
out fields or whatever. If there's
Yep.
ag in there, you can almost call your shots and be like, there's going to be a stand there, there's going to be a stand
Yep.
there. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, we want to hunt these places because we think that's where the deer are going to be, but we don't factor in the reality of it might be super dry, and they don't want to feed there the same way they want to feed in those little micro habitats somewhere that are closer to the water table, that just have a different level of nutrition. And
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I mean, the cool thing about that stuff is you can find it. Like, they're going to leave sign there, just like you're talking. You get into the bottom of that valley, there's going to be sign there, because they just generally are hubs for deer activity. So you're going to have the does going through there. It's like, they're going to show you they're there. Now you just got to solve for how to be there when they're there.
Yeah, for sure. So for you, where are you going to be at when it is the October lull?
So I am going to mostly be in northern Wisconsin, but I will be taking my daughters in Minnesota too. And
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of, I stumbled on this spot trout fishing a couple years ago, and hadn't like seriously scouted it for deer. And
Mm-hmm.
this summer I was over there just driving around, actually was leaving fishing, and I saw some deer, and I was like, I gotta just give this some time. Like, this chunk of public, there's thousands and thousands of acres of it there, and I'm pretty interested in it. I've only been in there a little bit, but I think that's where I'm going to spend most of my time. And I
Cool.
think, up there, the bear season's just about over. By the time this drops, it'll be over. The amount of hound hunters running bears in there, and the amount of activity in certain places, I feel like that's going to really position the deer. And then there's just certain things going on with that trout stream, and having some different kind of food around it. And um, it's just like a cool environment. And so that's where I'm going to spend most of my time looking for one.
Sweet. Well, you heard it from the expert, folks. He needs to get up in a tree and get out there. So this was a good conversation. Thanks for coming on, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.